So a couple situations here. We're going to talk about how to plant a spring food plot and a couple different options. And whether you really need a spring food plot. To be honest with you, a lot of times you don't. So for instance, on our new property that I have, it's all surrounded by agricultural fields. They're planting rotations of beans and corn, most likely with the cost of crops this year. Most likely it's going to be all beans within the area. It might be some corn depending on the farmer and such, but the area that I'm hunting and the fields that were part of our property is being farmed out, and it's going to be planted in most likely all beans. So I was able to get about an acre of the fields from the farmer in order to plant a food plot. And when we had talks with the farmer about getting an acre of that field to be able to plant, it was kind of frowned upon on a way, because they were arguing, saying, well, you can't get no better nutrition for deer than beans. And I absolutely agree. You can't compete with acres and acres and acres, 50, 100 acres of beans. You just can't compete with it. But my idea of this and what we're doing is we're not really focusing on spring and summer food, because we can't compete with that. So we're focusing on fall food. And in our farmer's mind, yeah, they're planting beans for to cash out on and to harvest, and you can't get no better nutrition. But what happens when the beans are cut? You're left with no food. So that's when our fall food plots come in handy, and you're able to attract and feed deer throughout the winter, fall and winter months. So to plant a spring food plot, I'm still planting, but I'm not focusing on feeding the deer. I'm focusing on setting the soil up in order to plant a fall food plot. So on my process is, right now the farmers aren't using cover crops, so it's just bare soil. I saw a lot of erosion on the fields, and what I'm going to do is we're going to come in, and we already soil tested our areas that we're planting in. It's not too bad, has room for improvement for sure. So we're going to be coming in, and I'm planting overhaul from the Maine Outdoors, and overhaul is a mix of seeds help to overhaul the soil. It's got some buckwheat in there and some different things. I'll play it over the screen here so you guys can see, but I'm planting both sides of the road in the fields up against the wood line in overhaul, and that's basically going to do two things. It's going to help improve the soil leading up to the fall food plot, and it's going to help prevent weed growth leading into the fall food plot. So it's going to cut down on chemical costs and things like that. So when you're planting a spring food plot, think of that. Do you really need a spring food plot? Do you have a lot of ag around to where you're trying to, what are you going to plant to improve the deer herd? When you have tons of beans and stuff around, what are you able to plant? Are you going to plant a little quarter-acre clover plot? Well, in that case, you save your work and your money, and don't plant a clover food plot. Just plant something to where you're just improving the soil, whether you're planting some buckwheat or something like that, to where the deer aren't really going to necessarily feed on that, and your goal isn't to feed the deer. Let them feed in the agricultural fields. Plant something to prevent weed growth and help improve that soil leading into your fall food plot. But if you want to plant a spring food plot and you need one, how do you do it? Well, a couple different things. If it's bare ground, obviously you're going to get a soil sample, and you're going to add the lime and all that stuff according to what that sample calls for. And there's lots of different things you can plant. If you're trying to feed the deer, if the food plot is big enough, you're like, for instance, in big wooded areas, you're going to see more results than you would if agricultural areas. So soil sample it, obviously pick an area that makes sense for the food plot, areas that you can get to, and if you're trying to hunt, you cannot get to that area and not spook the deer. All that stuff has to play in, and hopefully you have that figured out with a habitat plan of your own or somebody else's. And soil sample, lime it, whatever you got to do to get the pH right. And if it's brand new ground, I usually always say this: if it's brand new ground, you're going to want to spray it with glyphosate and 2,4-D, just to kill off that first initial planting of growth coming up, spring green up. And you're going to work your ground up, whatever you're trying to do, and you're going to want to wait. The biggest failure with planting a spring food plot is people don't wait. They plant too early, and you put the seeds out, and everything dies because you end up getting too cold of weather, you get a frost or something, and everything just dies. So you have to wait depending on your state. I can't tell you when to plant your spring food plot because I'm not in your state, I'm not in your area. Nobody knows. You can't go by the dates on the back of a seed bag to tell you, hey, because it gives you a range of April till June. Well, that's a big difference. So when you plant, you have to go by temperatures in your area. If usually most fall plantings, you're going to be planting with temperatures above 55, 60. Egyptian wheat and beans and stuff needs warmer temperatures, 65, 70. So you're going to have to wait. No matter what it is that you're planting, right, you have to get good soil to seed contact. I was on a property in Kentucky. I don't recommend planting beans too often, but I was in a property in Kentucky recently, about 6 weeks ago or so. It was for a client, and it was 200 acres, and I recommended they planted a 5-acre field in all soybeans, and they're going to leave them stand. And it's going to be mainly a destination area for the deer as they funnel down through the ridges and things out of the woods. They're going to funnel their way through food plots down into this big ag field, and they're going to plant beans. They're going to leave them stand, and when the leaves start to turn yellow, they're going to just broadcast some winter wheat and things into that food plot. So when the leaves fall off, they're going to decompose on top the winter wheat seed, and then it's going to allow sunlight in and allow all that growth, and they'll have the pods plus the green underneath. Perfect combo. So there's different ways you can do it, but main thing is to get good soil to seed contact, whether you're planting some clover. Clover is usually a base of a food plot program. It works very well. It attracts a lot of deer. I play some footage over. Really, clover is just an all-around good food source to feed deer. It's high. It can keep up with browse pressure. You can plant soybeans if it makes sense. If you had a lot of acres, you can actually plant soybeans. Are a great, wonderful food source for deer. Especially if you leave them standing, you have the pods. But a lot of times they wipe them out, so you have to have that green base underneath to do that. This is just an option for you guys. You can plant buckwheat. Buckwheat is a good soil builder. It prevents weed growth. Deer don't really eat it. Sometimes they will, but it's a good soil building, seed crop to plant for anything really. You can add in some sunflowers. Sunflowers have those big heads and thick stalks. They're good organic matter for the soil, good soil building, and that's very good to plant if you're trying to build soil. Now deer will tear up some sunflowers. They usually eat the leaves off of them, so you're just left with the stalk and then the head, which is fine, because you're just using that head on those things, the sunflower itself and the base, the stem, the stalk, to work back into the soil and kind of build the soil up that way, to add some green manure into it. I'll play some footage of that as well. It's very good. A lot of times you can plant sun hemp. Loves warm temperatures. Deer love sun hemp. It's high in protein. You can mow it. It grows right back. So these are just different options for you. You can plant cowpeas, different types of clover and chicory and alfalfa. If you're in colder temperatures, I wouldn't plant alfalfa because then it just dies off. But you have to assess your state, the area that you're in, the temperatures that you receive. If you really need to plant a spring food plot, there's lots of options out there to do so. In an area that has big wooded setting on your property, and there's not a lot of ag fields around, there's not a lot of browse, there's not a lot of food within the area, a lot of closed canopy forest, you're going to need more food in order to see the difference in the herd itself. So in that situation, I like to provide a year-round food situation such as clover and alfalfa. There's a lot of blends out there. I like Domain Outdoors blends for that, but we're planting incognito as well this year on our property to screen in that food plot around that backs up to the wood side. We're planting strips of that to block that off, not only for access but to screen the deer so they can't see out past that food plot. So there's lots of options you can choose from. Try not to waste your money on planting a spring summer food plot if you don't need one. Try to just build the soil up leading into your fall food plot. Don't try to feed the deer necessarily if you're in ag settings, because most times you just can't compete with that, guys. Have realistic goals and you'll see good results. Any questions? Give the video a thumbs up, comment down below. I'll see you guys on the next video.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you want more information on food plots, soil samples, and habitat management, click this video right here on the screen. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you guys are new.